following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello, I'm Carl Seidel, host of The People's View. The People's View is a show sponsored by the Nashua Republican City Committee. The committee meets every second Thursday at the Crown Plaza. And if you want to contact us, we have a website, nashuagop.org. And at the end of the show, you'll see some contact phone numbers or email addresses that you may want to send us your comments and recommendations. Thank you for listening in.
Welcome to The People's View, a program dedicated to discussing local, state, and national issues and their effect on the American people. The People's View provides a platform for state representatives and national figures to present their viewpoint. Whether it's social, economic, or financial topics, you'll hear it on The People's View.
Hello and welcome to People's View. We're going to take a little bit of a change from our political candidates, and we're going to talk about something right here in Nashua. And for that, we have Alderman Dan Moriarty, Alderman-at-Large. And Dan, welcome aboard, and tell us about what's happening in Nashua.
Well, thank you for having me, Carl. There are a lot of things happening in Nashua. I'll try to tell you about what I'm closely connected with, the Board of Aldermen and a couple of the committees I'm on. One committee, Planning and Economic Development Committee, of which I'm the chairman. Very
good. Well, let's start off with the budget, because that, I guess, has made the most headlines recently in the paper. Tell us what went on, because there were some controversial things there. There were contracts. There were what you're going to spend your money on, whether you're going to fix up downtown more, and you had some funds left over that you were able to disperse and hopefully lower our tax rate a little bit.
Yes, it's been a ongoing topic. It started out in actually the whole budget mess. I'll just jump, spoiler alert here.
Okay.
Budget a mess, in my opinion. It started out last fall when the school department starts putting their budget together, and we started hearing that the Superintendent Conrad was going to submit a budget that was a $5 million budget growth, where the spending cap would have prescribed a $3 million budget growth. So right off the bat, the budget he proposed took up the entire city's allotment of budget growth for the year. So right off the bat, we have a problem. So the Board of Ed did spend some work to push back, and of course the mayor pushed back, and eventually the mayor submitted a budget that included a reduced portion of that school department, but it was still the whole budget combined technically was under budget, but in principle was over budget. Now, why do I say that? The budget came in, there were two pieces of legislation. The legislation that was the budget itself, I forget what the resolution R46 or something, and that was the $241 million for the general fund. And then there was another piece of legislation which created this special revenue fund for road repair, which spent $2 million. What happened with that special revenue fund is it was a mechanism to be able to meet the budget demands and meet the spending cap technicalities. What happened is that special revenue fund took road repair out of the budget so that now there was room for something else to fill in that hole. Some of us, me in particular, saw that as just out of principle an incorrect way to proceed, because the purpose of the spending cap is to keep the tax rate growth.
A little bit of a shell game.
A little bit of shell game. It's sort of analogous to if you had a law that said you could only cut down so many acres of trees in a forest per year. And so in order to maintain, but we needed more wood to burn or to make paper or to make houses out of. So if you just redefine the boundaries of the forest, now you can cut down trees over here that are not part of the forest anymore. So what the Special Revenue Fund did is it redefined what the general fund was. So I, from the very beginning, tried to get my colleagues to get on board with saying no to the Special Revenue Fund in order to maintain the spending cap. In the end, the Special Revenue Fund passed 11-4, and the budget went ahead and passed 11-4. So the statement can be made that the budget itself came in under the spending cap, but that's only if you exclude the Special Revenue Fund effects.
So you still have to raise the money for the Special Revenue Fund.
That's more the trickery. The Special Revenue Fund is already funded, but the part of pulling the expenses out to pay for the road repair, they pulled out revenues out of the general fund. So the Special Revenue Fund is paid for a large portion of it by by the state block grant.
I see.
Highways and roads. But what happens now, the general fund has a hole in revenues. So the spending filled in the spending cap, the other departments' budgets filled in the amount of the spending cap, and we had to come up with this $2 million property tax to backfill that.
I see. Okay. So well, how about some of the main elements of the budget that were controversial, the contracts, for example?
Sure. So along the way, as already sort of mentioned to you, the school department is the largest portion of it. That's why I'm not trying to pick on the school department, but it's 57% of the budget. So as the school department budget goes, so goes the city budget. And 80% of the school, police, fire, and public works department, 80% of the budget is salaries and pension and other benefits. So the contracts, the union contracts that establish the salaries set the stage for the budget.
Large portion.
A large portion. Yeah. Unfortunately, what happens, or fortunately for some people, unfortunately for other people, what happens is the votes for the contracts happen approximately 6 months after the vote for the budget occurs. Or it's not planned that way on purpose, but that has
worked out that way.
It has worked out that way. So and also we had a change in board leadership and a change in board membership. So the biggest contract item, being the teacher salary, was voted by the previous board last fall. And the new board came in, and so when we're all discussing the budget, we hear comments like, we have these obligations that we have to meet. So we can't have draconian cuts to the budget because otherwise we'll have to have layoffs. So there were a few weeks there, a few days there at least, you might have read in the paper about 16 or so teachers got notices that they were going to get laid off. None of that happened.
But that's just part of a routine that you have to tell some teachers.
Yes, there's a law that says if there's a possibility that you might get laid off, you have to be notified. So there was a possibility that, although not real.
That almost happens every year, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You have some number that get layoff notices, and then nobody gets laid off.
Right. So some more specifics, so you can decide for yourself on what you think of the budget or the contracts. The contracts, I voted no on the teacher's contract because the numbers were very close. And so it's easy to say, 3% pay increase or a 3% base salary increase. That's not so bad. It's not 30, it's not 13, so it's 3. It's not a bad number. But when the spending cap is defined by the consumer price index, cost of living, inflation. So the inflation rate sets how much the city budget is allowed to grow. And that's 2%. But the contract set a 3% salary increase. It's like a very small number, but if you take that's a $140 million budget, suddenly 1% of $140 million is $1.4 million. Now you have a budget problem. And so I held firm. It's an unpopular position to hold. I hope nobody takes it personally because it was business, not personal. I just said we need to stay within the 2%. And that budget passed, that contract passed. So we come up to the budget discussions, you hear we have these obligations we have to meet. So we have to figure out ways to spend the money to cover all this, and hence the special revenue fund. But it would have been nice if I could have accepted that. The revenue fund being passed, it would have been nice if we would have amended it to make it a little bit smaller, $1 million, say, instead of $2 million, or even passing the budget itself. But the board decided to actually increase the departments, both the school and the police departments. So the departments submitted their budgets to the mayor, and the mayor made cuts. And so the board collectively decided to increase what she gave back to what they originally proposed. So, which is, in order to reduce a line item in the budget, you only need 8 votes. You need a simple majority. In order to increase the line item, you needed a 2/3. You needed 10 votes. Earlier in the spring, I had heard from a couple people, there's no way we're going to, if you were to vote down the special revenue fund, there'd be no paving, because the paving was took out of the budget.
Yeah.
So that's the trick. So that was very strategic on the mayor's part to submit it this way, because if the fiscal prudent people on the board decided to collectively get together and vote down the special revenue fund, suddenly there's no paving. In order to put paving in the budget, you need 10 votes. There's no way we'll be able to get enough people together to agree to actually have a 2/3 majority. So that was sort of was suggested to me. I was thinking, look, you have to stick to your guns and do what you can. As it turned out, it was a spend fest. We had people that wanted to add money. It actually worked the other way around. Nobody was willing to cut. So you had a group. We were unable to get any single group of people that agreed to cut the police, or agreed to cut the schools, or agreed to cut different sections, and it ended up being.
Well, it's almost like when the school board doesn't get its education request, they say, well, we're going to have to either charge for sports, or we're going to have cut the school busing or something like that.
Right.
It takes something that they believe that people are very sensitive to.
Yes, and I don't mean to imply that at all, that everybody's all conniving and evil and they're trying to spend this and this. I mean, for the most part, a large group of the people indeed they feel that they need to spend the money to hire more teachers or do various things, or spend more money to hire more policemen. There is at least one member of the Board of Aldermen who is a policeman, although not in Nashua. There's one member of the Board of Aldermen who would like to get the the police union's endorsement. There's one member of the Board of Aldermen whose best friend's brother is a policeman on the Nashua Police Force. So behind the scenes, people have their biases. I told everybody that I have I'm pro-police and I'm pro-fireman. I work for a living building hardware to protect their lives, but so I try to separate the two.
Well, what about the controversy in downtown and fixing up downtown? You took some of the leftover money. I guess you had leftover money from the current or the previous budget, and now you use was it another $100,000 on. How did that get in there?
Well, okay, there's a lot of there are escrow funds. So you might be referring to. So let me segue. Sorry for the confusion. So the budget passed. I gave up that battle. We move forward. Now what we find is that there's $3 million of unspent money in last year's budget, which I'll get to in a second. And among that $3 million, we use what's called escrows to carry that over to the new year. And one of the items within that money that wasn't spent is money that they want to put towards the Main Street project. So that is indeed a very controversial project. I was one of the most outspoken against it along the way from the beginning. Main reason that more aesthetics, the trees all being cut down and they replace the bricks with cement. There's no budget, there's no schedule, there's no plan. It's sort of done ad hoc. And so here we have another case where there's already money in the budget to fund the Main Street project. then at the end of the year, we find that there's unspent money, and the proposals to take some unspent money and add to sidewalk projects. Some of it is sidewalk project money that was unspent. That's going to continue, that they would like to complete the project.
Yeah.
So regarding those escrows, there's $3 million in money that was unspent. In principle, the way next year's budget was set, they use current year budget as a basis of an estimate for next year's budget. And so line by line, they go, well, we spent this much this year, therefore we need to spend it next year. So if you go down, you find, you know what I'm getting at here. Suddenly, after it's all said and done, we have $3 million of unspent money. Now, those projects need to be accomplished. Many of them do. But they're going to be accomplished over the next year. So the argument that we accomplished all these things this year, and we're going to need to continue to accomplish these things next year, therefore, but this is how much we need to spend, is now no longer valid when you find that you have $3 million worth of unspent money. Now, out of a $241 million budget, that's not bad. It's actually a good thing to have some money left over. But when you have that $3 million left over, the instinct of everybody, except me, is to just spend it all. So they have $3 million, and it's a menu of 50 items of how are we going to spend all this $3 million? Well, what about giving some of it back to the taxpayer? Has anybody thought of that?
Or filling that $2 million street fund. Exactly.
We have a $2 million tax hole. Well, as it turned out, conveniently, or thank goodness, the economy is picking up enough that so we have yet another item. So there's all these number. So the budget, we start with the contracts were too much as far as I'm concerned. As far as I'm concerned, it caused a budget problem, which I predicted, and indeed it occurred. They went ahead and basically override the spending cap, and now we find out we have some money left over. And rather than give that back to the taxpayer, then go ahead and spend it all. But there is a boon in revenues. So thank goodness the economy has picked up enough that the saving grace here is that we have $5 million in revenues more than projections. And so that money is going to be put towards next year's to pay down the tax cap. Yeah, so. You know,
I have a feeling
it was
the same
0 for 4, and we got one right.
Well, I have a feeling that the state's going to do the same thing. They're going to count on some extra revenue to make up their overspending for this year. This fiscal year.
Well, there is a problem that I discovered by watching the Budget Review Committee. The pension fund is projected. We're going to be hit with a $2 million pension bill. I think it's 2 years from now. And so the CFO is already trying to plan ahead. So he had put away $400,000 in a line item that was to try and build up so that all of a sudden we don't have this $2 million
Is that
obligation.
just a one-time thing, or is that going to happen?
It's going to be a $2 million jump.
Yeah.
So it's a one-time forever.
Oh, forever, okay. And when's the next jump? When you see what kind of return you're going to get.
Yeah.
I hope they invest in Apple stock or something.
I don't know. That'd be good. That'd be good.
Yeah, I don't know how you're going to do that, because they probably overestimated the return on their pension money. But anyway, one thing I was really wanted to get into with you was your Planning and Development Committee. Tell us what that committee is. Is that a relatively new committee, or is it?
No, PEDC's been around forever. Planning and Economic Development Committee, PEDC. It's kind of hard to say, Planning and Economic Development Committee. It's not. We have Finance, Budget Review, Human Affairs, Infrastructure, Personnel and Administrative Affairs, and Planning and Economic Development Committee. And then there's the Joint Special School Building Committee. So those are the 7 standing committees that we have.
I see. Well, it's better than DREAD.
Better than DREAD, exactly.
Which is the state committee.
Exactly. So planning. So we do both planning and economic development. You could in some sense there's overlap, not quite redundancy, but there's similar goals with the Economic Development Office. There's a director of economic development in the mayor's office. There's a planning department in City Hall. So the executive branch has a director of economic development, Tom Galgani, and director of planning director of the planning development department. And she used to be Kathy Hirsch, and she left, and they recently hired somebody, and she's got rave reviews. I met her recently. I'm sorry, the name escapes me.
So what's coming?
So the Board of Aldermen has a similar thing. So that's sort of like, what do we do? Well, the legislative branch of City Hall has this committee whose purpose is to address these issues of planning and economic development. And I was excited to be named as chairman of it. I asked to be a chairman. There's one thing I wanted to do is be chairman of PEDC. I'm on finance committee also. I only wanted to be on 2 committees. I didn't want to be 3, 4, or 5 committees because I just wanted to be able to focus on the task at hand. Finance is just heavy workload because you twice a month no matter what. But PEDC doesn't get much legislation. Infrastructure is like loaded to the gills with legislation. So it's an opportunity to take some sort of initiative to have special guests, which is what I do. The past several years, they just canceled half the meetings. Literally, they met 6 times in 1 year. This year, we've met, well, it's month 9, we met 16 times already. And we brought on special guests. This past Tuesday, Lucille Jordan, the president of the Nashua Community College, was our special guest. And the goal with having these special guests is they come in, they give a presentation for 20 minutes, and then we have question and answer for about an hour, and then we adjourn. So I've discovered this issue that I'm calling Nashua's Urban Challenge. So I live in Ward 9 on the south end, and as I was exploring Nashua, knocking on doors, visiting people, and really got to meet everybody in the city, and I learned more about the city, for instance. It's good to know that about half the students in Nashua Public School System, there's 11,000 students, about half the students in the Nashua Public School System come from families that qualify for free or reduced subsidies for meals. Half the students. And the top end of a family of 4 for free is $30,000 a year. The top end of a family of 4 for reduced is $50,000. So half the students come from families that are making less than $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year. And Sandra Ziem will tell you this issue also, and she's chairman or commissioner on the Board of Education. It's a challenge to the teachers. So we have students coming in who are not fed, not clothed, and haven't studied, haven't showered, and it's no way to learn. They're just not motivated to learn. They're not able to learn. They're not energized to learn because we have people who currently live here in Nashua. Nashua's urban. It's not like most of southern New Hampshire. So what can we do about it? So I thought, well, what we need are jobs that pay between $30,000 and $50,000 a year. Okay, that's just the obvious answer, right? The problem is,
how do you do it?
How do you do it? And what are those jobs? So I've spent some time asking around. And there's a guy by the name of Gary Henkel that I know who's I met on the symphony, and he actually said, yeah, you can actually, those jobs are the types of jobs that go overseas, that have gone overseas. Advanced manufacturing jobs is the way to go. Advanced manufacturing is the solution here. You need to have a product that you can sell that sells high enough quality so that you can afford to pay the salaries of people in the $30,000 to $50,000 a year. But in order to make those high enough quality, it has to be mechanized. So automation, computer automated assembly lines, and a small company, lean company. And those jobs aren't unskilled. There used to be a time when if all you want to do is just work 40 hours, you could just go work 40 hours and you could work your way up into through that salary range and make a living that way. Nowadays, you can't just simply be willing to work 40 hours a week. You have to actually have skills. Because unskilled is service industry. That's sub 30,000. So in comes Nashua Community College. So what we need is a way to train and educate the people who don't have skills to get just enough skills to be able to go in and work in the factories that we need to come here and pay those salary ranges. And then they now have a career, they have jobs, they can support themselves, and it's self.
Do you have companies that are currently here that are looking for those people?
We do, not just in Nashua. Hudson's like the headquarters of advanced manufacturing. So one of the things we learned from Lucille Jordan, there was a young kid who's a Boy Scout, came up and asked a question during the general discussion and said, how many of your students do you have jobs available? How many of them get employment? And Lucille Jordan said, every single one of her students that takes their manufacturing, their advanced manufacturing certificate class, a 2-year course, are employed before they graduate. Every single one of them.
Good.
So we keep hearing about this gap in the skills in America and in New Hampshire, that there are companies out there that are looking for this skill set. They can't find them. And so Lucille Jordan has recognized this, and what she showed us on Tuesday at this committee, PEDC, they have this software package where they can go on and they can, it scours the web and finds out what are the job listings, what type are they, and so as time goes on, she and their curriculum directors can set the curriculum so that it's targeted for the jobs that they're out there. So instead of someone coming to, going through high school and saying, okay, I'm gonna go to college, and they graduate broke without any marketable skills, what we need now is a change in sort of the culture in the high schools and the parents, for that matter. Many people, who wants to do assembly line work? Who wants to do manufacturing? Well, it's an honorable skill.
Yeah. We only have about a minute left. How is this going to all tie together to increase more companies coming here because we have skilled people?
There are many more steps, and I asked that question directly to Lucille Jordan. I said, it's my hypothesis that if it's such a tight profit margin to make a living, to be able to have the company be profitable, why would they come to Nashua? If the community college and the high schools can recognize the skills that are needed, then they can get the people prepared so that now the industrials can come in with their company and directly hire, not to have to train them on the job. And then they can actually make a profit, and then we have
Well, you're going to have continued meetings to make sure that this is taking place?
That's my next step. I have some names that I got from David Brooks from the Telegraph. I said, can you, he's the guy who covers that type of stuff. I said, who do you know that I can talk to that would like to hold this discussion and possibly come in and talk to it with us on PEDC?
Well, let's hope, because I know a few people, if they get elected, are going to be doing that on the state level, so maybe you can tie in with them too.
Absolutely.
So we'd like to have, well, maybe we get you back here in a couple of months, let us know what's happened.
Sure.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you very much for the interview, and good luck in running all these new things that you're getting involved in.
Thank you very much.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.